Oh, that was weak. But this is what you got.
We're going to work with what we got, and that's...
What?
I mean, it was cleaner. It was definitely cleaner than the first one around. It sounded less strained, so we will go with that one. Welcome to another episode of, regrettably, Running Out the Clock. This is the second in our series that we're going to do over the summer. Kind of in place of our old preview format. This instead is our format that involves... it's our best case scenario format. That's what we've been doing so far. Last week we covered the top teams in the East and the West, and also covered number 2 in the West, Alabama, based on standings last season. And of course we started things off by talking about the Noles. I have to mention that at the top of this episode because we don't have anything new to talk about with the Noles, but we do want to mention how much we love talking about the Noles.
I love talking about the Noles. Like you could keep everything else. Like if the only thing that we get in this college football season is just talking about the Noles, I'll talk about the Noles. Let's talk about the Noles. You know?
I'm with you. Gray, how you feel about talking about the Noles?
I feel like we should start a Noles pod.
Is this not already a Noles pod?
We're talking about the Noles.
So I'm your friend Joseph Craven. We got Crambles Johnson and Grabe Arns here on the pod tonight. Shout out to our homies Ro Hunter and Keith Harkins who could not join us. But it works out because 3 teams that we're previewing, 3 people in the recording session. That's a 1-to-1 scenario, y'all. I think we need to go ahead and just jump straight into it.
It's actually a 1-to-1 scenario.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I guess that would work out well. I'm trying to think, like, if you did a 1-to-1, meaning one person to one team, and then you had
don't think about it too hard.
One person to one team, and then one team to like
too
one.
Much.
Yeah. You know what? I never should have gone down that rabbit hole.
I didn't sign up to this podcast to do no math.
That one's on
me. All right.
Yep.
This is not the y'all lifestyle, okay?
That one's on me, and I apologize, y'all. Okay, so we are covering the next 3 teams in the lineup. If we did number 1 and 1 in the East and West, and then number 2 in the West, we now start things off with the number 2 team in the East from last season. We're going to cover 2 in the East, and then numbers 3 in the East and the West. So if we're starting off this episode with the number 2 team in the East, that would be the Florida Gators, who finished 6-2 in conference, 11-2 overall. Once again, another year sitting behind Georgia in the standings. And I was given the assignment of coming up with the best case scenario for Florida. So it was an easy best case scenario to come up with because the best case scenario for Florida is the same best case scenario that's been going on since Kirby Smart got to Georgia. And it's try to take the East away from Georgia. You know, like every year has kind of seemed like the same storyline with the Florida Gators in the past few years. It's been, okay, Georgia has lost these weapons. Georgia has lost this. You know, Georgia has question marks here. Can Florida take advantage of that? Last year, I mean, the closest they've got, an 11-win season all in all, is an outstanding season, especially in the second year under Dan Mullen, where you kind of see how Mullen is able to like quickly implement his system and quickly get his offense going the way he wants it to, stuff like that. Like you're seeing all of that. The biggest question with Florida, well, there's 2 big questions. One of them being, you know, whether or not this is a team that is going to ride or die behind the arm of Kyle Trask, because it seems like they're set up for that. And another one being, you know, can Mullen finally push into the upper tier that he, you know, has always badly wanted to push into, and basically why he went to Florida or went back to Florida to have that opportunity and say, okay, this is in a better position to win the division. Also, I coached here before, so I like this place. But, you know, it's in a better opportunity to win the division, go to the SEC title game, all of that. Like, that's why you go to a place like Florida, and to try to take advantage of the resources they have, the fact that the East is a little bit weaker, the fact that Florida's got the prestige to jump up and try to take over control of the East. That, this could be the year if things align. That said, this has also been the storyline for the past couple of seasons. Hey, this could be the year where things align, We don't quite know what a Jake Fromm-led team is really going to look like in his first full year as a starter, a couple of years ago or whatever. We don't really know what the Georgia team's going to look like replacing these players. It's been almost a Groundhog Day sort of scenario. And we talked a little bit beforehand. It's interesting that all three of these teams, much more so than Alabama, LSU, a lot of LSU, but much more so than like Bama and for the most part LSU, Georgia bringing in like a grad transfer QB. These three schools are schools that are really probably going to depend more so than even those last three solely on the quarterback position. And Florida, in this case, has the returning, returning passing leader. Like, everyone else that had more passing yards than Kyle Trask is gone now, which is just hard to believe.
It's weird. It's weird.
So it really does rely a lot on Kyle Trask. So the best case scenario for Florida, is Kyle Trask lives up to the preseason hype, because there is a lot of, he's the 6'5", strong arm type of guy, deceptively mobile, kind of a lot of a Carson Wentz type of guy. And so there's a lot of preseason hype about him. So if he lives up to the hype, and Florida can take advantage of the fact that Georgia, once again, graduated a lot of weapons and is seemingly weaker, best case is they win the East. A realistic case, though, is I feel like somehow, some way, they're still going to end up in second place. So that's my best case scenario, is almost entirely behind the arm of Kyle Trask. Gentlemen, I'd open up the floor now to you two. What would it take for Florida to be exactly like their pinnacle peak Florida, their best case scenario? Chandler, we'll go in alphabetical order. Why don't you go ahead and, do you have anything you want to tack on? Anything you disagree with? Anything?
I think
you want to change?
I disagree with all of it. No,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
No, I think that. Obviously Trask is going to be important, and how well he plays is going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that kind of the theme with Florida in the last several years is going to continue, that their defense is going to keep them in a lot more games than maybe their offense can kind of keep up with. Because Trask, I think, is going to be good. How good? Who knows? I've seen everything, even comparing him to Joe Burrow and saying that
right.
He's going to be Burrow 2.0 or whatever. And I don't think he has the weapons around him to be Burrow 2.0. I don't know. I don't really know what Florida has as far as skill position players, receivers, running backs, those kinds of things. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're just probably not as good as LSU's were last year. But I fully expect them to have a really good defense again. And if Trask can find one or two guys that he trusts to throw the ball to, and then they can come up with a steady running back. Doesn't have to be a great one, just got to be a pretty good one. Then I think they're going to be in really good shape. I don't know, just because I don't know what to expect from Georgia. I don't know how good I think they can be. But they're not gonna. I was just looking at I was doing my research, my extensive, well thought out, well developed research for my Tennessee best case scenario, and I don't see all that much in the East that really threatens them this year outside of Georgia. So
right.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down as much to the defense as anything.
Yeah, I think that is once again, it's kind of why it feels like a Groundhog Day scenario when you talk about the SEC East and you talk about Florida's place in the SEC East. Is so much of it is, well, Georgia is going to be the top competition because that's how it's been for the past few years.
Right.
You know, and everyone else looks like they're still missing a few pieces to get up there. We'll talk about Tennessee more later on, but
if you want to get really Groundhog Day about it, talking about Florida's defense is going to be really good. It's going to have some games that look absolutely amazing, and then it's going to have a game or two where Todd Grantham just calls the stupidest blitzes in the world that anybody can look and say, "Oh, he's going to blitz here, and they're going to throw a touchdown pass," and that's how it'll go because I don't like Todd Grantham.
No, you don't. No,
that's what he does. But like he gets all this hype as this brilliant defensive coordinator, and he like it seems like he just makes one or two fatal mistakes a game. But I don't know. That's me. No, but I mean, I remember watching that Mississippi State Alabama game.
Don't even.
And you know the play I'm fixing to talk about. Like Hurts had not hurt them at all with the deep ball the entire game. And then it's like third. It's like I think it's like a third down, and it's late in the game.
4th and 3 or 4th.
Maybe
and 5.
Maybe it was 4th. And I don't remember who I was watching the game with, but I turned to him and I said he's going to blitz here, and Hurts is going to find him for a touchdown pass, and he did. Like that's that. But the flip side, and I promise I'm not trying to rub salt in you guys' wounds, but the flip side is when it works out because he did just about the same thing when Florida went back to Starkville the first year there, where he just called like it was late in the game and he just calls a safety blitz, and I mean he just drills the quarterback right there.
Yeah,
so
Fitzgerald just got destroyed.
It's a big high risk high reward kind of thing,
Yeah.
but it frustrates me because it feels like he's playing with enough talent on defense that he doesn't have to do that quite as much. Because when it goes. I mean, when it goes like it's a gamble, and so when it goes badly, it goes like how it did against Alabama. So,
yeah. You see, I'm always one of those guys. I don't hold it much against Grantham because I always kind of prefer. I kind of like a high risk, high reward type of defense.
Yeah,
like personally, that's kind of my style. And maybe it's because I've watched enough of like, if we keep talking about former Mississippi State coordinators, I've seen too many bend but don't break defenses at Mississippi State that I've always been mostly frustrated with. And I get that it most of the time those end up being really good red zone defenses because that's how the mentality is. So it ends up being like your defense could be one of the top red zone defenses in the entire country, and teams aren't actually scoring and finishing drives, but it can be frustrating to see teams put together 7-minute long drives whenever they want.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like a high risk, high reward personally, but also that's why I don't gamble or play poker because that's how I am. If there's even the possibility of something working out, I'm going to be like, yeah, absolutely. Just go for it. It's great. So, I will add this also with Florida's defense because, I'm glad that you had mentioned the Florida defense before I had to go get up and tell my dog to stop barking at literally nothing. There was nothing outside for my dog to be barking at, but she was livid.
So you think?
She ran it off. She scared it away. But Florida did, statistically speaking, Florida last season allowed fewer touchdowns than everyone except for 3 teams in college football.
Pretty good.
Yeah, San Diego State, Georgia, and Iowa had better scoring defenses last season than Florida did, and that's it.
Seems decent.
Yeah, it seems decent. And
although since we started recording, 17 more Florida players have transferred or been kicked off the team.
Right.
So
or tested positive for COVID-19.
Exactly. Everyone's sick. So they have to their leading tackler, their leading sack leader from last season. And then, of course, C.J. Henderson, who is one of the biggest cornerback prospects in this most recent draft class. All 3 of them are gone. So that's a lot of statistics and ability to have to recover for. So a lot more is going to have to rely on Grantham as a coordinator and less on the talent that Florida has this year. So this is the year where you might see more of exactly what you're talking about. Grantham's gambling completely biting him. So, Gray, what do you have that you would change or edit about this best case scenario for the Gators?
I mean, I wouldn't. The comparison to predict, Trask and Burrow, I think, is just way too exaggerated. But I think his role definitely has the same type of a ripple effect that Burrow had with LSU, because they have. I mean, we've been talking about their defense so much. They're going to have the talent on defense. They may or may not have the scheme on defense. We'll see. It might be great sometimes and not so great other times, but it's all going to depend on him. Even if he's just a semblance of what Burrow was for LSU last year, that's going to once again have them right there in the thick of things in the East, competing for that top spot. I mean, and Georgia's in a very similar position as well. I mean, they don't know how one of their two transfer quarterbacks are going to have to wait and see with JT Daniels. That's pretty interesting. If he gets a waiver to play immediately or whatnot, but
no, he's not expected to get a waiver to play immediately.
Good. I think that's crazy.
They're going to start the other transfer from Wake Forest.
Yep.
And I've already forgotten his name. Oh well, he should be pretty good.
Jamie Newman.
Jamie Newman. There we go. I think that it's gonna depend on him if he can be at least somewhat explosive for Florida. That's what I'm waiting to see again for Florida, is the explosiveness on offense. It seems like it's been a minute since they've really had a quick strike kind of approach. I mean, Dan Mullen wasn't really known for being a high octane offense. He ran a power spread type of offense, kind of grinded you out.
Yeah. An almost 50-50, or no, like a 60-40 run pass most of the time.
Yeah, and man, he will eat you alive with some wide receiver screens out on the edge. My goodness, but
that man got Percy Harvin as a coordinator, and just kind of assumed that everyone could do what Percy Harvin could do.
Yeah,
it never made any sense.
It did not make any sense at all. But I don't know the skill positions like probably a lot of people do. But you would have to assume with Florida talent that they would have some guys that would be able to kind of get loose on the edge if they can. And I don't know. That's what I got. I think y'all covered it pretty well by the time I got over here.
Yeah, another thing about Florida this year that I will tack onto as well is they're probably going to have to be much more of a rushing team than they were last year, because they just flat out lost several receivers that graduated. And then, of course, I mean, we know one of the running jokes in the SEC is Dan Mullen's complete inability to recruit wide receivers. Right, That's just one of those things that has always just kind of lingered. And so he can develop players that fit the offense well enough, but he doesn't necessarily get game-breaking wide receivers. He lucked out with some guys that were there, getting a guy like Van Jefferson, who was more of a traditional wide receiver who transferred in and was then able to play that outside route well. And those guys are gone. A lot of those guys are gone. So they've got a lot of good running backs, and they got a big-bodied quarterback in Trask that really fits, the type of guy that Dan Mullen loves to run quarterback draws with. So this is probably going to be just a very classic Dan Mullen type of offense this year, in the focus on the rushing attack and then the quick slants and bubble screens when the passing game needs to be developed. The thing is, though, he's got a guy in Trask who can throw a long ball more consistently. We assume at least he has the arm strength to do it more often than anyone else that Mullen's had in his time as a head coach. So it'll be interesting to see. But I still feels like a lot, they've got a lot of tools, but still a lot really has to actually click in a way that doesn't tend to happen for Mullen teams. And this could be the year. this could be just another second place finish, which is, I mean, technically, I think most Florida fans at least would consider this to be like still ahead of schedule. Like, probably would not have expected an 11-win season in the second year with Mullen. But maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know what expectations were going into it. Why don't we switch over to Auburn on the other side of things? We mentioned, of course, that all three of the teams were talking about the biggest storylines, or probably the biggest storylines with them, involve quarterback play. So, Gray, you want to talk a little bit about the legendary Bo Nix and the Auburn Tigers?
Sure. Yeah. So Auburn, obviously they've lost a lot of experience and talent, especially in the trenches on both sides of the ball. According to Athlon's preseason prediction and preview for Auburn, they lost all 5 primary starters on the offensive line. That is not great, especially for an offensive line that wasn't particularly noteworthy. I would say Bo Nix, every time I can remember him, he was kind of running around for his life and didn't really have much of a ground game to go with that. But they definitely have some talent at the skill positions. I think that Seth Williams is a really underrated and kind of forgotten guy as far as wide receivers go in the SEC. I think he's really, really solid. And then Schwartz also, I think he can be an interesting weapon. I don't think they utilized him as much as they could have last year. He had several like wow moments in some games that really turned things around for him. I think it was Texas A&M. He had some reverses or something. It was just like, wow, I don't think anybody else in the SEC could have made that play. He's just so unbelievably fast. The running back position is going to be kind of interesting for him. Had some kind of unexpected departures. Jarvis Whitlow, I think, left the program, if I remember right.
Yep.
So I think they're going to have to kind of go with that by committee with a pretty inexperienced offensive line up in front, which could make things interesting. But at the same time, Malzahn is kind of known for his quirky spread type of offense. You never really know what's going to happen with some of his calls. They tend to be pretty creative. So maybe he can draw up some things that would alleviate some of that inexperience up front.
What I do wonder, didn't Chad Morris end up at Auburn?
Yeah.
I wonder how much of a say he's going to have in that as well. Like if they're going to really make him a primary play caller or not, you know?
Hasn't he worked with Malzahn before?
That's a good question. I'll look that up. Gray, you keep talking.
Gotcha. Yeah, that is another interesting little facet about the team this upcoming season. His new offensive coordinator, Chad Morris, obviously didn't impress too many with his tenure at Arkansas, but he is kind of known for his offensive philosophy, how that meshes with Gus and what we've traditionally kind of known to associate with a Gus Malzahn coach team will be a pretty interesting thing to look at.
He was at Clemson, not Auburn before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now apparently, according to Wikipedia, where they overlap is that he and Gus, at the time that they were both assistants, were tied as the highest paid assistant coaches in college football.
Interesting.
Yep.
Wow, when was that?
Early 2010s, I think. Yeah, 2011.
Okay, yeah.
2011. Isn't that
Wow.
weird?
That is super weird. Man. So I think to sum up offense for Auburn, I think it's going to depend a lot on Bo Nix and how much he develops as a quarterback. Obviously, he was highly touted Lots of talent there. Kind of fits what a Auburn quarterback and the Malzahn regime kind of looks like. He's got the wheels, he's got that mobility. He's got a good arm. He's got to get better in the accuracy department. He didn't complete a whole lot of passes, but it's coming from a true freshman. That's a lot to ask stepping into the SEC. So it's going to depend a lot on him, but I think it's that offensive line is pretty concerning, especially when you look at what the SEC brings to the table. And then on defense, they lost some pretty major guys in the trenches as well, with Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown. I can't think of a single person on the defensive line other than those two guys from last year. So that's never a good sign.
Those were good ones.
Those are definitely good ones. But Auburn, I think they do kind of tend to fit that keep us in the game type of role, type of scheme, I guess, that we were talking about earlier with kind of what we can get frustrated at sometimes. I think they're going to have to settle for that type of scheme this year. I don't really see anything that really hypes you up for defense. I think they might have a couple of all SEC preseason guys, but nothing that really stood out to me.
Yeah, they lost a lot. I'm looking at a list here of like guys that graduated. I mean, even behind Brown and Davidson, let's not forget that they lost Igbenogany. I'm not going to pronounce his name correctly, but that's the closest I think I can get.
Hey, good try.
Yeah, who was a real, not necessarily a game-breaking corner, but a very high potential corner who went ahead and banked on that NFL potential and all that.
Good for him.
Yep. So I mean, he's out. Like they lost a lot of secondary guys as well that I kind of forgot about. I think linebackers seem to be the only position group they haven't lost a lot of. And I think that was kind of an unimportant position group for him last season, honestly.
Yep. Kind of looking at this, I think the best case scenario for Auburn is going to be dependent on what other teams in the West are like. I know that's kind of a cop-out, but if Texas A&M is what we have known Texas A&M to be the past 3 or 4 years, then they've got a shot to be in the top 3 in the West. If Ole Miss and Mississippi State aren't hitting on all cylinders in their first year under new head coaches, that's a plus for Auburn. It's just, I don't see anything really on the team personnel wise, other than strength at the wideout position and potentially at quarterback that really stands out to be elite to me. But I don't think that's going to matter all that much when you've got Arkansas that's under a rebuild, both teams in Mississippi that are more or less in a program shift. LSU, they're going to be extremely talented. They're LSU, and they're kind of a recruiting juggernaut right now. But are they going to be able to live up to what last season was like? Probably not.
No.
No.
Probably not. That was an all-timer right there. So, if Nix can make strides and the defense can make strides as well, I think they've got a shot to be third in the West. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Almost maybe by default, like a similar situation kind of to what we were talking about with Florida. But Chandler, what's anything that you would want to change, amend, disagree with anything Gray said?
Yeah, no disagreement. I think just comparing Trask and Nix, I think Nix is actually more important to Auburn's success than Trask is to Florida, just because of how much Auburn did lose on defense, and so yeah. I mean, you're gonna have Nix, who Nix looked awesome in some games, or I don't remember any like singular game where Nix looked awesome, but there were moments there were big moments like in that Oregon game. And I think that kind of shaped the narrative of him for the whole season. That first college game, Oregon's top 5, national TV, like whatever, and he makes a couple of just awesome plays that you don't expect a true freshman to make. And then the rest of the year, he was kind of he wasn't bad. So I think he's got to take.
He looked like a true freshman.
Right, right, and that's fine. That's to be expected. That's not dogging him at all. I think he's got potential to be a really good player, but he's got to take a really big step this year, I think, in order for them to be good. But I do think that, I do think that best case scenario probably second in the West, just because I don't think. I think the rest of the West is going to be in such disarray, and Texas A&M is just going to be Texas A&M. Like, they're not going to be in disarray; they're just going to be them. So, yeah, I think you're pretty spot on, Gray.
And last year, Auburn was very, very close to having a really remarkable season with a true freshman quarterback. They were, I think, a 3-point loss to eventual national champion LSU.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
I don't want to dog Nix at all. I thought for a true freshman, man, he was really good for a true freshman. But I think with that, you always have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, he was a true freshman. He had a great season as a true freshman. But if he plays like that again this year, then you're kind of like, okay, there's a problem. Like, you got to take a step forward.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the weird thing about this complete lack of an offseason is how much of a step forward can you realistically take, given what we've kind of seen with the state of football right now.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. The biggest knock on Nix that you can really have, unless you just really hate Auburn and hate, Bo Nix, the biggest knock on him is he looks like a freshman, so it is not at all an insult to anything, not everyone.
Yeah.
It's rare for, true freshman quarterbacks to just step in anywhere and then instantly look like veterans on the, and then the college level. It's just such a different game. So, I think it's fine. One of the things that you said, Chandler, that I really kind of want to add on to a little bit is kind of comparing Trask and Nix. This is also, comparing coaching styles in that, Dan Mullen's offense is one that obviously he plays a lot through his quarterbacks and does a lot with them and all. But Mullen's the type of coach who is, a player developer and kind of has an offensive scheme that players can step into and quarterbacks can step into and succeed in. Look at Trask and his ability to step up when I just drew a blank on Felipe Franks' name hard
starting
there.
Arkansas quarterback.
Right,
Felipe
exactly.
Franks.
So when Franks goes down, Trask steps up and, Florida keeps going. And so, Mullen knows how to prepare those players, how to get them into their offense and make them fit. I feel like Malzahn is a little bit more dependent. Just the way he runs a team, he's more dependent on his quarterbacks being able to do a little bit more. Even when he, as a coordinator, because he was still the coordinator when Nick Marshall took over as quarterback, right? Or had he left already at that point?
He was the head coach with Nick Marshall.
With Marshall, he was the head coach already?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember the exact order of events of when, Newton and then he leaves and, all that. So, he's able to take a guy like Nick Marshall who, is not a quarterback, but was a playmaker in his own right. And without Nick Marshall being able to make plays from that position, the offense doesn't work well and the team isn't very good, regardless of whether Nick Marshall was an actual quarterback or not.
Right.
So I just feel like Malzahn's he just the way he runs his offense really more than a Mullen offense depends on whether or not that quarterback can fit and do what it is, all the things that he's calling on them to do, because they've got some ground weapons, and I really love Schwartz. I think he is primed to be one of the top players in the conference this year now that he's in a more elevated role, because that man is just stupid fast. And it's fun. So there's some weapons on the outside between him and Williams and all that. But, I mean, if Nix isn't able to get the ball in their hands and it's just a lot of sweeps and then, some options or runs with whatever running back it is that takes over for Whitlow, it's going to be a struggle. And it's going to be maybe a little bit more of the same as last season, especially with what you said, Chandler, how we don't have an off season. There's no,
right.
There's not like the same amount of spring practices, all that stuff. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. So, no, I think everything you said, I don't, disagree with anything. Those are the only additions, only notes I would have made to the best case scenario. There's a lot riding on Nix this year.
Yeah.
Man, do y'all remember the quarterback play at Auburn after Nick Marshall? It was not good.
No, it was terrible. I'm trying to remember the kid's name now, who like the very next season, because they were like, oh yeah, well, there's a more traditional quarterback back under center this year, and it
they after like really ever since Cam, it's been pretty
Yeah.
I remember some dude named Barrett Trotter.
Yeah.
Golly, man, yeah.
They had Joey Gatewood was going to be the savior, and then Bo Nix comes on board. Who was it? There were two, three other guys that. There was a dude named Sean White.
Sean White, there you go. That's what I was looking up.
Like the snowboarder.
Yeah. Because and the guy that I was thinking of, that they were like, oh yeah, well, we finally got a more traditional quarterback under there by the name of Jeremy Johnson taking over. And Jeremy Johnson had to split time with Sean White because he
you talk about I know we joke about Tua in the preseason Heisman. Tua at least deserved it. They started talking up Jeremy Johnson. I remember that whole summer. It was Jeremy Johnson's awesome. He's going to be the best quarterback in the SEC, like front runner for the Heisman, blah blah blah, whatever. And he was awful.
Yeah,
it was great.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yep, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. So it'll be interesting. There really are gonna. I didn't realize that about their offensive line as well. How many of their linemen are gone? It's never good. That's the unsung heroes, man. You really notice them when they're gone.
Yeah.
You really notice them when they're gone. All right, so far these teams, we're kind of putting them at best case scenario, just looking at the way the league is shaped around them. Best case scenario is probably ending up in about the same spot. And Auburn exceeded expectations last year, I would have had them pegged to be a maybe 6-win team, I think is what I said. I forget what I said in the season preview last summer, but I wasn't very high on them, and obviously they exceeded those expectations. So I feel like this is the year in which maybe they come back down to earth a little bit, but can benefit from the fact that no one else, under them in the West, or everyone else under them in the West is like in transition years as far as coaching staffs go, all that sort of stuff. Like, it really just comes down to whether A&M actually, lives up to hype as well.
They still have Kellen Mond as their quarterback, so they won't.
So there we go. There's the official statement. We'll have more on our next episode, but there's the official early statement from Crambles Johnson. Hey, Crambles, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Tennessee Volunteers and your boy, Jarrett with 2 T's, Guarantano.
Guantanamo Bay, baby. So Tennessee is the first team so far that I think is really interesting in the conversation, because like everybody's like Alabama and Georgia's best case has been, national championship. Everybody else has been, second in the East or West. Like Tennessee is Tennessee's just really interesting because their quarterback play is still Jarrett Garantano, and I'm thoroughly unimpressed with him.
I mean, the man was benched several times last
Right?
year,
Yeah.
so.
But they for one they finished really strong. They won 7 of their last 8 games, so good for them on that. And then they've kind of been the darlings of the offseason with the way that they've been recruiting because Jeremy Pruitt is just really, really good on Zoom. Like you get on Zoom with Jeremy Pruitt and you just love amateurism and you love the idea of running through the power tee and singing Rocky Top after the game. Like you just fall in love with it, right? So they've gotten all this hype, but if you look at what they did in those 7 of those last 8 games, the teams that they beat were Mississippi State, who finished 6-7, South Carolina, who finished 4-8, Vanderbilt, who finished 3-9, Missouri, who finished 6-6, UAB, who LOL, I didn't look. Kentucky finished 8-5, and then Indiana finished 8-5. But Kentucky at that point was playing their like number 1 wide receiver at quarterback.
Yep.
So the fact that Kentucky went 8-5 under that situation is unbelievable. So you can make the case that this is where like they're going to make a really big jump, and they're going to feels like 98, baby, like we're back. Or you can kind of because even winning their last 7 of their last 8, they're still the same team and the same quarterback that lost to Georgia State or Georgia Southern or who I don't know who it was. It was one of those teams. And I think they lost to BYU. They struggled in a couple other games, and so I still don't think that they're good enough to beat Georgia or Florida. I still don't think they're good enough to beat Alabama, and they play Oklahoma. So I'm thinking best case is 8-4, because again, just because of the quarterback play. But I think the interesting thing about Tennessee this year is their offensive line. For as much as I like to joke about Tennessee and rip on them and all that kind of stuff, their offensive line is going to be really good. And it may be, I haven't heard yet. I'm sure the news is out there and I just haven't looked it up. But if Cade Mays is eligible, then you're talking about maybe the best offensive line in the whole country. And that can make a really average quarterback look a lot better, in which case they're a much better team. But I still don't think that even with that offensive line that they're going to have the firepower to hang with a Georgia, a Florida, an Alabama, or an Oklahoma. So, and then I think you're looking at what some of these other teams, and maybe Kentucky kind of keeps it going. Who knows? But yeah, I think for them it's going to be 8-4, and I think 8-4 for them would be a really good season. It would definitely be something that you can say because they've got some 5-star, like maybe like the number 1 quarterback from last class, kind of waiting in the wings and hoping to kind of get escape from Guantanamo Bay before they have to play him, and so it shouldn't be as funny as it is to me, but
but it never stops getting good.
It never does. So they've got the quarterback talent waiting in the wings. I think you kind of are hoping you don't have to go to him because freshman quarterback, even a redshirt freshman quarterback, you don't necessarily want to trot him out there. I don't know if he's a redshirt freshman or a true freshman. I just know he was like the number 1 quarterback in his class. Harrison Bailey's
a true freshman.
Okay, yeah. So again, as we saw with Bo Nix, maybe a 5-star, maybe an awesome player, but you don't want your hopes to kind of depend on a true freshman quarterback. So I think if they roll an 8-4, then they're going to be in really good shape, I think, for the next season. But this year, I think 3rd in the East, and winning 8 games, maybe a 9th at the bowl game is best case scenario.
All right, Gray, you got anything you want to add on to that? Disagree with anything at all? I know that one of the issues with Tennessee is, they really are a team with a lot of question marks going into the season. As you said, Chandler, they're really the first one we've come across that's actually interesting to try to figure out because I don't know. So, Gray, you got anything you want to tag on to what Chandler's saying?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't know too much about Tennessee's personnel, but I do know that it feels like they do have a little bit of momentum going in their favor. You can see it on the recruiting trail, and it seems like Jeremy Pruitt is doing a pretty fine job so far. Much better than we, I guess, kind of thought that he would be. And I think finishing, third in the East and 8-4 with a bowl game would be a big step forward for them, especially what they've got waiting in the wings. So, yeah, I mean, I can't. I don't think I have the knowledge to disagree with anything that you're saying, but I do think that they are trending in the right direction. It's going to be funny looking at, with Tennessee kind of trending upwards a little bit, what that means for a program like Kentucky. I know that we're going to get to them later, not in this show, but later on in this series. Kentucky is a team that was kind of taking, that middle of the pack East spot. What does that mean for them with Tennessee looking like they're going to be trending upwards in the next couple of years? So that'll be something to look at. But yeah, I think that they're almost there, ready to kind of be the Auburn of the East, the perennial third team in the division. But I think that they've got a lot to look forward to, and if the season is even better than 8-4, I think that the program is looking to make a big turn, especially if Florida might not be as good as we think that they're going to be. So Tennessee they're definitely going to be one of the teams to kind of follow throughout the year, for sure. They're like Joseph said, one of the more interesting teams to look at, because there's just so much unknown.
Chandler said that. Excuse me, Chandler said it. I just quoted him.
Oh well, I'm just going to quote the requote. I'll give both of you credit. I'm sorry.
I'll take the attribution. Thank you.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Yeah, that's all I got. Tennessee's pretty interesting. Pretty cool.
pretty cool team you got there, Tennessee. Pretty cool. I'll tell you what worries me about Tennessee, because Gray, I love that you pointed out their momentum. I don't know if there's another team that is riding the amount of momentum that Tennessee was riding, considering the way that they ended the season so well, how much of that team returns versus a team like an LSU who lost so much of their key players and everything. Tennessee's got a lot of stuff, players coming back, a lot of talent. But the issue here is that if you look up, notes about Tennessee, you have an entire long list of just all the quarterbacks that are even on the roster.
Right?
Like we mentioned, Harrison Bailey, the big-time recruit, the true freshman. But we didn't mention the fact that they still returned the two guys that would often come in and play in place of Jarrett Guarantano last season, in Brian Maurer and JT Shroud. I think they're both still around. I don't think either of them have left since this list that I'm looking at here was published all the way in... Gosh, that was published in March, so that might have changed. I'll have to double check that. But they've got a transfer quarterback, Kasem Hill from Maryland, has transferred into Tennessee. So he's there. So you got Guarantano. You got a transfer quarterback from Maryland. You got a highly touted true freshman. You got guys that Guarantano was, replaced by last season. There's just the fact that you even have to list out in a preview of the team 5 quarterback options is a little troublesome. And that's what worries me about the team, is that they are primed to be a team that has too much disorder to keep that momentum going. They're primed to be a team that can either lock it down, find what works, and boom, they keep going. Like, for example, when things went well for Kentucky, even though they were playing a wide receiver at quarterback, they just found something that worked and went with it. And when it worked well. And like Tennessee might be able to do that with a quarterback rotation. But, that's the old adage, you got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. Well, what happens when you have 5 quarterbacks? What do you do with that? Because those dudes aren't, lining up at wide receiver and running back So that's the issue I find with them is when you have that much potential uncertainty because your like best bet at a returning starter got benched a lot last season, that can completely derail things quickly. So it would not be it wouldn't be surprising for me to see Tennessee start this season the way they started last season with 1-4 and everyone feeling like everything's gone off the rails.
Yeah, and I think the biggest picture or the big picture thing for the quarterback situation is you may have 5 on the roster, but you really have 1, and it's Harrison Bailey. I mean, your goal is to. I think if you're Tennessee, your goal is to redshirt him if you can. If you can get enough play out of Jarrett Garantano to bring Bailey along slowly to get him accustomed to college life, to practice, to running the offense, all that kind of stuff. But if you're bringing in a 5-star quarterback, he's the guy until he shows that he's not. And so my thought would be that this year, if Garantano struggles and if they drop a couple games early or do something early on that they shouldn't do, then I mean my thing always is, hey, just put the future out there and let him get the reps so that next year and in 2 years when the talent is really there, as Tennessee seems like they're recruiting, when the talent's really there, you've got the really talented quarterback, you've got the guy, and he's not just talented, but he's also very experienced. He's got 2-3 years under his belt, and he's ready to go. Because realistically, if he's as good as you think he is, if you redshirt him, if Garantano starts the whole year, whatever, you're going to get 2 years as a starter out of him anyway. He's going to go pro. So, they may be trying to figure some things out as far as like what's our short-term situation, or like if Garantano goes down and has to miss a game, but not like 6 weeks of the season, then it's like, okay, well we'll go with this transfer guy or whatever. Yeah. But if a change has to be made, then I think the change is to Harrison Bailey.
Yeah,
and they definitely do seem like a team. Oh, sorry, Doug.
No, you're good.
They definitely do seem like a program right now that if they do run into some kind of adversity, my gut just kind of tells me that they probably wouldn't respond well to that. So if that is the case, where like you said they do drop a couple of games early, or the momentum is kind of shifted a little bit, yeah, man, throw that future out there, see what you got. If it's not great, then that's building towards the future, and put the show out there, let them see where the program is headed. So and
I'm not personally a huge believer in momentum anyway. I mean, I think
especially from season to season, and the fact that a spring hasn't happened. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Spring hasn't happened, and momentum can be manufactured, right? Like everybody's high on this. Like, oh, we won 7 of our last 8 games. We, they won their bowl game. They did all this. They did all this great stuff. But if you look, it's like, well, does you beating a Kentucky team starting Lynn Bowden at quarterback, does that help you beat Georgia or Alabama next season?
Right.
No. Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a huge believer in momentum as it stands, but I mean, I do think there's something to be said for getting the young quarterback in there and kind of getting him accustomed and helping him kind of get that figured out.
Yeah, get him some playing time for sure. I think if there's anything that helps them out in their possible pursuit of being able to redshirt him and save him for next season is the fact that there are so many players available at the quarterback position.
Right.
That maybe they can just say, hey, you know what? If we do well enough right here, like well enough, and this plays into what I think would be the best case scenario for them, is that they do well enough with what they've got that they can weather the storm of we have 700 quarterbacks. Half our roster are quarterbacks. And we don't know which one's the starter. They can weather that storm and come out on the other side and say, okay, great. Now we also have the entire future of that position locked down with this kid who now gets to unquestionably take over after that. So I think that's part of the best case scenario for him. That said, I mean, this team, man. Because who knows? Like, you never know when Kentucky's just going to pull something out. They're a resourceful team, you know?
Yeah.
They just find ways to kind of just be a thorn in the side. They might do that this next year and surprise you by being third in the East or something, you know?
Well,
so
how many games is Bob Stoops going to win?
10,
or Mark Stoops, or whichever
10.
it is.
Lawrence Stoops is his name.
Yes.
And he does not go by Larry. He goes by Lawrence. All right.
I feel like Lawrence Stoops is an amalgam of all the Stoops brothers.
He is. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. All right, that's going to wrap up the next 3 teams. Gentlemen, we did it. They said it couldn't be done, but we recorded a podcast. Good for us.
Dang, who are they?
Congratulations, guys. High fives all around.
Thank you. Socially distant high fives.
Yep.
They being everyone who knows us and has very low expectations for the way we live our lives, of course.
Yes. Yep.
But
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. That's the way we like it, man. That's that running out the clock lifestyle. You know? Lowering expectations and still failing to meet them. That's how we do it.
Are you going to tell the people about the big project that we've been working on that they can expect soon?
I think we should go ahead and tease it. What we have been working on, what Chandler here in particular has painstakingly created for us, crafted for us is a better term, I think, is an entire tournament between all of the SEC football coaches in the very well-received video game WWE 2K20. All right, so we've got this entire just monstrosity of a tournament that we have received, we have simulated, we've received, and we've been recording our reactions to it. And so those videos, the tournament to determine the East and West champions, will be coming out soon enough, and that will be followed up by a secret, very special that we won't reveal what it is quite yet.
I would like to say that I have bound myself to pick my SEC winners for the season based on how this tournament goes. So yeah.
So good luck. Oh man. So stay tuned for that. We'll be dropping the links to those whenever. Honestly, just whenever I edit the videos. It's all resting on me at this point. So, all right. Thank you for tuning into this episode of ROTC. For Gray Barnes and for Crambles Johnson, I'm your friend Joseph Craven. We'll catch you next time with our next best case scenario episode featuring. Let's see who we got on the next one, boys. It looks like we got South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State.
All right.
There you go. We'll see you next time on ROTC.
Peace.
That stands for running out the clock, in case you forgot.